Okay, you're not going to believe this one. What if I told you that for a short, absolutely chaotic moment in history, a bunch of sailors got so fed up with being fired that they just started their own country? Seriously, a whole country run by pirates on this perfectly placed island in the Bahamas. This isn't a movie. This is the real, wild, and kind of hilarious story of the Republic of Nassau.
So, you gotta picture this. It's the early 1700s. The War of Spanish Succession just wrapped up. Now, for over a decade, thousands of sailors, these guys called privateers, were basically legal pirates. The British government paid them to go attack enemy ships. They were heroes. And then, poof, the war ends. And the reward for all that dangerous work? It's basically like getting called into the boss's office and hearing, "Yeah, thanks for all the plundering, you're fired, get out."
So now you've got thousands of really skilled sailors, they have their own ships, they have cannons, they have a very particular set of skills, and no jobs. And they are super ticked off at the Empire that just used them up and tossed them aside. So what do? Well, the logical next step is, obviously, you sail to some abandoned island and you start your own pirate nation, right? No kings, no government, and you better believe, no taxes. But how was this even possible? Well, it all came down to one specific place, an island called New Providence, and its port, Nassau. See, strategically, this spot was a huge deal in the Atlantic, but it had, let's just say, a rough past.
This poor island was basically a geopolitical punching bag. The British built it up, the Spanish burned it down. The British rebuilt it, and then the French and Spanish teamed up to flatten it all over again. So by the time our newly unemployed privateers show up, Nassau is technically British, but not really. It's a ghost town. You've got this amazing deep water port, empty buildings, broken forts. It was the perfect blank canvas for a crazy new idea.
And so they just took it. Over 1,500 of them sailed right in and set up what we now call the Republic of Nassau. It was basically a pirate commune, an outlaw's paradise, where nobody cared who you were before and the only law was the one you made for yourself. I mean, for a bunch of guys who just got betrayed by their king, you can see the appeal. Okay, but even an anarchist's dreamland needs some kind of leadership, right? Otherwise, it just turns into a total mess. And the guys who stepped up to lead Nassau were some of the most legendary and weirdest characters in all of pirate lore. They were kind of the unofficial presidents of this whole operation.
First on the scene was Benjamin Hornigold. He saw all the chaos and figured they needed some rules. But his pirate code wasn't what you'd think. It was shockingly democratic. The crews voted for their captains. All the loot was shared out fairly. They even had a form of workers' comp. If you got hurt on the job, you got compensated. Think about that for a second. These pirates had a better social safety net than most of Europe at the time. But Hornigold had one big problem. He still had a soft spot for England. He made a rule: no attacking English ships.
Well, the pirates didn't like that one bit. So they did what you do in a democracy. They voted him out. And who did they replace him with? His apprentice, a guy named Edward Teach, who you probably know better as Blackbeard. And these two could not have been more different. Hornigold was trying to build a republic. Blackbeard? He was trying to build a brand. This is the guy who lit fuses in his beard to look demonic and wore a chest full of pistols. He built an image so scary that ships would just surrender on the spot.
And under Blackbeard, Nassau absolutely boomed. The harbor was overflowing with stolen ships, markets were selling all sorts of stolen goods and cheap rum. It was basically the Las Vegas of the Atlantic, this crazy multicultural hub for outlaws where there were no rules, no kings, and plenty of cash to go around. Nassau was at its absolute peak. But then, Blackbeard got bored. He just sailed off to go cause trouble elsewhere, leaving the top job open again. Of course, the British Empire wasn't just going to let a pirate superpower hang out on its doorstep forever. Yeah, the party in Nassau was about to come to a very, very sudden stop. The year 1718 is when it all fell apart, and man, it happened fast. Word about this pirate nation finally gets all the way to King George I in London, and he is not happy. He sends a fleet led by this tough-as-nails former privateer named Woodes Rogers, and Rogers shows up with an offer that's kind of hard to refuse. The king's pardon. Surrender now, walk away, and all your crimes are just forgiven.
Now, the really crucial thing here is who was in charge of Nassau when the Royal Navy showed up. It was the third president, Charles Vane. And Vane was, well, he was pretty much the worst possible person to be in charge during a delicate diplomatic crisis. Hornigold was a rulemaker, Blackbeard was a showman, Vane was just a burn-it-all-down kind of guy. He hated the British, hated them.
So how does Vane handle this incredibly tense situation? Well, Woodes Rogers politely offers a full pardon for everyone. And Vane's response is to set one of his own ships on fire and aim the flaming wreck directly at the British fleet as his answer. It was a bold move, maybe a little too bold. His own crew, seeing the entire Royal Navy about to blow them to pieces, decided, you know what, maybe our leader is just a little bit too crazy.
And so, with total annihilation staring them in the face, the pirates of Nassau did the most democratic thing they knew how to do. They held another vote. Vane was unceremoniously kicked to the curb, and they voted in his quartermaster, a much flashier but way less competent guy named Calico Jack Rackham.
So what did the fourth and final president of the Pirate Republic do? He took one look at the massive fleet of warships pointing a whole lot of cannons at his home, walked up to Woodes Rogers, and basically said, "Pardon, you say? Why, yes, absolutely, sir. Piracy? Never heard of it." He took the deal. Immediately. And just like that, in July of 1718, the Pirate Republic of Nassau was officially over.
So the Republic was dead. But the story of these legends doesn't just stop there. So what happened to all our main characters? Did they retire and live a quiet life? Come on, they were pirates. Of course not.
All right, let's do a quick rundown. Charles Vane, the fireship guy, refused the pardon, kept pirating, got caught, and was hanged. Blackbeard also refused, and he died in this insane, brutal battle later that same year. They said it took 5 gunshots and 20 sword cuts to finally bring him down. In the craziest plot twist, Benjamin Hornigold not only took the pardon, he switched sides and became a pirate hunter for the British. And Calico Jack, he took the pardon, got bored after a couple months, went back to being a pirate, and was immediately captured, while drunk, and hanged.
But honestly, the real stars of Calico Jack's crew were Anne Bonny and Mary Read. When their ship was captured, the story goes that they were the only 2 on deck fighting like lions, while Jack and the rest of the men were passed out drunk below. They were sentenced to hang with everyone else, but they both avoided it by pleading the belly, a legal loophole where you claim to be pregnant. Mary sadly died in prison later on, but Anne Bonny? She just vanishes from all historical records. What happened to her is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries.
And what about Nassau itself? Well, under its new governor, Woodes Rogers, the island got a major cleanup. It was fortified, turned into a proper, respectable British colony. They rebuilt the forts, brought in law and order, and just like that, the golden age of piracy was over. The wild experiment had ended.
So what do we make of all this? It leaves us with a really fascinating question. Was the Republic of Nassau just a hideout for a bunch of criminals? Or, with its elections, its social safety net, its complete rejection of kings and empires, was it actually one of history's most radical and most forgotten experiments in democracy? A chaotic, temporary glimpse of a totally different way of life? It's definitely something to think about.